Welcome. It's August 19th, 2020, and this is the Wayne and Carlin Show, and I'm without my partner, Wayne, because he got kicked out some kind of way, and so right now it's the Carlin Show, and so we'll be waiting on Wayne to come back in. We'll get him to join as soon as we can, so in the meantime, it's just me. It's the Carlin Show, all right? But hey, and when you think about 2020, we're talking about 2020, and it's interesting when you talk about 2020 because at the beginning of the year, everybody's so optimistic and everybody's going, in 2020, it's my year. I will see things clear in 2020, my year. Everybody's not saying that right now. Everybody's trying to get out of 2020. All right. So it's been that kind of year for everybody in 2020. And so a rough start for everybody. And so I think it's time for us to really focus on what's important. And really, that's what 2020 is an opportunity for. It's an opportunity for us really to focus on what's the priority of life and what should it be. And so great opportunity for that. So you can be very optimistic in the midst of this bad stuff that's happening out there. You can be very optimistic in the pits, because that's what the pits are for. They're to allow you to look up and get motivated about the things that can happen, the opportunity that can spring from death or from badness and from sickness, and how you can have hope in the midst of hell, And so that's kind of where we are here. And so, all right. So now I finally got Wayne back in while the show's going. So Wayne, I was just talking about that 2020 thing and how, it's been a rough year for everybody. So we're glad to have you back in. So you're back in. So glad to have you, man.
Technical problems, I tell you.
Yep. So, all right. So what we got, let me see. We're down where we're talking about what's on our show for today.
All right. Man, this is, I don't know what's going on with my laptop. I think I'm going to have to go ahead and spring for a new one because it likes to cut off on me like that. But man, we got a lot of stuff going on this week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, last week we ran out, I don't know if you mentioned already, but last week we ran out of time and we were talking about critical race theory. So we're going to try to cover that today. I don't know if you already mentioned that to folks, but
no,
man, what else is going on? We want to teach people about how to dialogue. We're going to talk about that as well. But man, talk about the Democratic Convention. Have you been paying attention to that?
Yeah, I did. And so, we got, the other things we'll cover. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We've got with our race theory, Democratic Convention. But that, I'm going to talk about that. But man, and we'll get to the looting and rioting and stuff like that. But that's amazing stuff that's taking place too. So we got the same things. And that's what's amazing. When we talk about 2020, all the bad things that were happening at the beginning of the year, that were happening 4 or 5 months ago, they're still happening. So my issue is that there's no resolution to these problems. In one of the teams I work with, I talk about, it's fine to talk about all the negative. Anybody got solutions? So we need solutions. We in the middle of this election that's happening, and and so this will be my segue into the Democratic Convention, because even when I think about the Democratic Convention, I sat and I listened to everybody talking. I'm listening for solutions, and I want solutions, and all I hear is, vote for Biden. He's not Trump. Vote for Biden. He's not Trump. Trump is bad. Trump is this. Trump is that. And I go, okay. What you got? And the answer is, we got a guy who's not Trump. Okay. And so we really need some solutions. And that's why, I even think in the context of the stuff that we do, Wayne, how we sit down with race, and we sit down and have dialogue about these issues. And we spend a lot of time talking about, what do we think the answer is here? How do we get out of this? What are the answers? And I think our country's not doing a very good job of looking at solutions. Everybody's more concerned, or seems more concerned, about airing their beef, airing their grief. I'm hating this person. I'm hating that person. And I'm going to cancel that person. I'm going to do that and stand against them. Let's shut them down. I got no solutions, but let's shut down everybody else.
Right.
So I don't know if that's because of social media or whatever, but that's just what's going on. And it's just terrible.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that we have gotten to the point, and I kind of felt this way in the last election too, but we've gotten to the point where it's really not about what you have to bring and what you have to offer. It's just that other person is so horrible, you don't want them. And I am hearing that from a lot of my friends, people I know, who are like, I don't like Biden either. I may not even like Harris either, but I really don't like Trump, and we just need to get him out of there. And so a lot of people are along those lines. And And you know what? I don't blame them so much because we've just had an interesting 4 years, and 3 years, whatever it's been, 3.5 years. It's been very interesting because we seem to go back and forth. Things change. We hear a lot of untruths, just so much stuff that. But at the same time, there are other people who say, they agree with him when he says he's the greatest president in the history of the United States of America ever. All that stuff. So yeah, we definitely are in a interesting time. This is going to be an interesting ride for the next month or two.
And I think that's why one of the segments when we're talking about in our show today, learning how to dialogue is so important. Because when you begin to speak so that people can listen, and you begin to listen so that people can hear, then we'll be in a different place, And so the speaking and listening has got to happen, and we've got to learn how to do that, and we've got to learn how to hear each other. And then, because the benefit of that is we can think from the other person's viewpoint and talk about how we can do these things together. Because you hear all this talk about, especially I know these both conventions are going to talk about togetherness and unity, but you don't get that in their actions. You don't get that in their actions. You get that in their rhetoric. You don't get that in their actions. Because we talk about Michelle Obama, you covering the highs and lows of the convention. I say the highs were Michelle Obama and the lows were Michelle Obama, because she gives so much promise when she speaks. She gives so much good stuff when she speaks. But then she always caveats that. Back in 2016, when she was doing the nominating speech for Hillary Clinton, I still remember her coming out, and she used the great line that she initially, I think I heard her husband say it: "We don't have a Black America, we don't have a white America, we have an America." I was like, now that's some good stuff. I was feeling that, whatever. 5 minutes later in her speech, she was going, "My little Black girl has an opportunity. My little Black girl." And I was like, wait, whoa. I thought you just said we didn't have a Black America or white America, which is what she had said earlier. And so that's the kind of thing that I think we've got to begin, especially in this year when it's a character election, as they talk about. It's a character election. We got to exude those things. We can't just mouth the words. We can't just say the words and then do something totally different. In her speech, so the other night in her speech, she was doing great. She was going along. And of course, me being the race guy, this probably doesn't hit anybody else the way it hits me, but she was going great. And then she said, one of the things, we are not getting along. There are a lot of people who are not going to listen to me. And then shortly thereafter, she said, "I am a Black woman." And so I guess she's saying, well, that's the reason they're not going to listen to me. And so let's throw that out there, and there are a lot of people who are not going to listen to her because she's a woman. There are a lot of people not going to listen to her because she's from a particular state or she's got a particular class. There are a lot of reasons. But if we stay in this Black and always use the Black thing, we always use the race thing, we'll always have the race thing. And so it's just, do we want to stay with the race thing?
Yeah. And she kept saying, I say kept, a couple times she said, and she's looking right in the camera. She did a good job with that, making personal contact. She said, "You know me." She said that a couple times to people. "You know me, and I speak from my heart." And so, yeah, I think that line, it wasn't really necessary. I'm not quite sure why she put that in there, but because she does have connections with people of all different ethnicities. People really love her, and it's because she comes across. She's very charismatic. She's intelligent. Obviously, she was a intelligent woman before she married Barack Obama. She already had her thing going on. So a lot of people can't connect with her, which is a good thing. So, yeah, she probably could have left that out, no doubt about it, because it's operating in a paradigm that we're trying to get people to step out of that paradigm.
And she said one other thing that I think is important for us to understand. And we'll cover some of this when we talk about critical race theory, how important data and information and facts really are. I didn't like the line she used where she said, in our society, we've got a never-ending list of Black men being killed by white police officers. And I went, never ending? This year, and so I looked it up. This year, there have been 8. And so I'm like, that's not really never ending. I mean, that's a finite number. That's not even your whole 2 hands. There's been 8. And so what is that? What's the narrative? Because, and this is where, when we talk about critical race theory, lived experience trumps facts and statistics. And so is that really never ending? I mean, 1 is too much, of course. And so that's logical that 1 is too much. But to paint think about it in Chicago last weekend and some of these other things that people we bring up numbers. I mean, really, let's look at these things objectively. And And so I think that's why it's important when you look at, well, if, okay, maybe it's the fact that they were killed by whites. Why is that so important? Why is that more important? Why is who killed somebody important? Why is the life not important? Is what my viewpoint would be. Is the life important, or is the life valued of less or more based on who commits the murder? And that's crazy.
Well, you know, my part of that is coming from a law enforcement background. And I always believe we have to hold law enforcement to a higher standard than just your average Joe citizen, you know. And so when it seems to be happening, and never ending obviously was not the correct word, but when it seems to be happening way too much in a certain segment of society or a certain community, then it's gonna blow things up. And law enforcement, in my opinion, we do need to hold them to that higher standard. And so that's what this whole thing that's going on right now too, about law enforcement and defunding and all of this stuff. People want to see law enforcement do a better job at policing the communities. And a lot of people, especially here where I live, a lot of people are calling for police to actually either be from their community or live in that community. But these days, that's not happening. Most are coming from 20, 30, maybe even 2 hours away because they don't want to live anywhere where they're working.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about that, because, you know, all of those things have an impact. And because, so when you do that, then you create a law enforcement or a sector of our law enforcement community who either don't want to do the job, or they don't do the job because people in charge aren't letting them do the job. So whatever reason you get, then these things have an impact.
Sure.
And I think that's what we're kind of seeing in Portland, where you really have continued lawlessness and people doing things against people, against property, and really nobody cracking down. So all these things don't happen in a vacuum. You know, I said this is kind of like a perfect storm where we've got a lot of things coming together. And so when we make some decisions about how we're going to view things, and especially those who are in positions of authority in the city, at the city level, the government, the federal government level, at all these levels, then everything's going to have an impact into today's current situation that we face. And we got to be careful about that, because I said this when I came back from Atlanta after I had the one meeting with the Black Lives Matter crew there. I said, we don't realize how close we are to this, in this tinderbox of this thing just blowing up. We really don't understand that, like I said, this is a perfect storm. And as I travel the country and I look at this, there are so many little things in play here that any one of those things could set off something huge. And I don't think we've experienced yet the extent of what that huge could be. And so we're American. We think, well, yeah, things will always get better. Things can always get very, very bad and can get much worse, because there is inherent in all of us, and especially those who want to do some bad, there's this level of malevolence that says, I don't care anymore, and I'm going to go out and just do some bad. And I think we're very close to some of that happening in a lot of places in our country.
Yeah, I know you're real big on leadership, you know, throughout your years in Marine Corps and even after that. And I agree. That's the name of my company, Soaring Eagles Leadership Academy. Don't you think we need a leader? And I'm talking about the top. We're in election year right now, who at the very least can come in and say, and try to diffuse some of these situations that are going on, instead of what I hear, and I may be wrong, I hear things that seems more insightful, more like inciting things to go bad, instead of trying to diffuse it and try to bring unity in these situations. That seems to be this is going to be a key point in this election, I believe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if we had great leadership from the top, we wouldn't be here right now. I mean, really, we wouldn't be here right now. And so, and the thing is, you know, while you want that leadership, then everybody else, it changes the requirement for leadership at the lower level when you have that. You know, I've been in some jobs where my leader, I thought, was terrible, wasn't doing the right things. I mean, in some very critical situations in our world too, and very, you know, and so you have to make a stand there, and it's tough, but you got to make a stand. And so you see some of that happening at the lower levels, but so we need leaders to rise up and come and make change. You know, I think what I feel, because I think of leadership that way, then my responsibility is the thing that I did when I left my job in 2018 and said, somebody's got to go out here. And I make a joke about it all the time. I say, we need unity. Somebody's got to create a unity movement. Well, that's what I did in 2018. And that's what I'm working on now. One of the things I did as I traveled the country and I'd have these TV interviews, you know, I didn't have nearly the sensationalism of Black Lives Matter, because you're talking unity. And so you're not going to, you know, you think I've got George Soros supporting me with millions of dollars. That's not happening, you know? And so it just gives me the feeling that I've got to double down on the work that I've got to do. And it doesn't make me give up. It doesn't make me jealous of what they got, because I still think I can make happen what needs to happen. But I've got a unity movement, because it offsets all the things that I'm talking about. Whether you got bad leadership, you've got bad actors out there who are doing bad things, rioting and doing these things. Somebody's got to be a voice of reason and say, I've got a better solution. And I think I've got a better solution. And now I've got to build consensus and get people to come alongside me so we can make that happen.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, hey, let's talk about this a little bit. All right. So critical race theory, this is one of the things we didn't get to cover this last week. And we want to cover this quickly because we don't have much time left, but we want to cover some of the tenets of that so that you can maybe get a better view of what people are talking about, not only of critical race theory, but inside of the race paradigm. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff that happens and people don't understand it. And I hear this all the time. People are saying, but don't you think this and don't you think that? They don't understand the language that's being spoken. And so critical race theory really does. It has its own jargon. And a lot of the stuff that you're hearing from both Black Lives Matter and some of the people in some of these other movements, it comes out of this critical race theory. And so I think if you can understand, and that's the thing, because I hear people from both sides who talk about this and they don't understand. I understand Black Lives Matter. I understand what they're saying. I understand their aims and their goals. And even the ones that I disagree with, and they have many points in their what we believe statement that I disagree with, but I understand them. And that makes it different when you're communicating with them, because you understand them. Because ultimately you'd like everybody to have your viewpoint in life, but you understand that everybody's not going to have your viewpoint. And as long as you can understand why they don't have that viewpoint, I think we can exist in a better fashion. So let's look at some of these terms that we talk about when we talk about critical race theory. Here are the 5 major components of critical race theory. By the way, this, and amazingly how, if you think about the history of how critical race theory came about, it came about, I think it was Harvard was a school where they had this subject called critical legal studies in the 70s. Well, the Black people thought they weren't being properly represented in the critical legal studies. So they said, we're going to create some other courses. And they created these courses. Some professors said that you're not addressing our concerns in critical legal studies. So we're going to create this new course, and they called it critical race theory. And that's what that was born out of. And so it was a rebellion in the beginning. Okay. So
Stanford. Wow.
Yeah. So that's where that came from. And so they came up with these tenets. And their first one is the one that is very predominant today. And it says, for those people who understand and say that racism is ordinary and not aberrational, which means it happens every day, everywhere, all the time. It's never abated. It's never been stopped in any kind of way. It's just ordinary. And that's the way America is built. And that's the way America exists. And it only knows the language of racism. So that's their foundational belief. And so that's why when you hear them talking about everything about how racism runs everything, racism is in everything, that's why they believe that. They believe that everything is built around that. And then the idea of an interest convergence, that really is saying that there is no such thing as getting along with that concept of racism. In other words, because our interests are so divergent that there's no meeting of the minds on this issue. And so critical race theory, and that's why critical race theory kind of says that it will last forever, because there will be no way that you can stop this thing from happening. So, so you got racism that happened and it's happening and it can't change.
Until we get rid of race.
Yeah. Well, they're saying you can't.
Right.
Yeah. So they're saying you can't. And that's why they have that third point, the social construction of race. Yeah, that is a social construct, but it's here and it's going to stay here and it's not going to change. And so we're basing everything on the fact that it's here, and that's the way we're going to operate, which is totally outside of my paradigm, which says we got to get rid of that thing because I'm trying to kill it. And they're saying you can't kill it. Don't kill it. You can't kill it. And then their idea of storytelling and counter storytelling is basically saying that my lived experiences and what have I experienced is of more value than anything else. Now, that's my view of what they're saying. They would probably articulate that and say, no, we just simply value the idea of storytelling, because through my story, you can find out who I am. And while your story is definitely true, your story might not be exemplary of what is happening in the rest of the world. Okay, so your story could be your story. This thing happened to me. Well, what if it didn't happen to anybody else? Then your story is very personal and real for you. We understand that, but it's not indicative of society. But in their case, I think they would say that, and like I said, I would hate to characterize them because one of my points is I hate mischaracterizing people. I would like to hear them respond, but that is the way I view it. I think they think that storytelling is more valuable than data and facts that say that otherwise something else different is happening than what happened to you personally.
Hmm.
And then the last one is the notion that whites have actually been recipients of civil rights legislation. You can see how then this ties in to their first two premises where racism is here. Everything is about racism and it'll always be about racism. So when you get to this fifth point where it says whites have been the recipients, then they feel like even when that happened, you had this civil rights era that happened in the 60s, that was done to facilitate racism. So we think of that as being, we broke through. John Lewis, Martin Luther King, we broke through. They're going, it's critical race theory says that John Lewis and Martin Luther King operated inside of the racism paradigm. And they even suggest that what their work was done in support of the racist. And so, yeah, that sounds kind of crazy, but that's where you get critical race theory. And like I said, you can do some research on that and find out what they believe. That is my summation of what I understand them to believe by some of the points they make. And it helps you understand a lot of the views. Like it really did help me understand a lot of Black Lives Matters views because they believe in this, along with some of the Black Lives Matter. Also, some of their stuff is Karl Marx theory. So of the oppressor and the oppressed. So this, you see how this works kind of with Karl Marx theory, because it says there's always going to be an oppressor. There's always going to be an oppressed. And so that
Right.
goes along with this. Yep.
So when you look at all that, and I know what the mission is here, what does that really have to do with race? What does that ought to do with?
Well, you see, it's two different worlds, because in one world, which I would call the American Unity Movement, erase race world, or Carlin Charleston world, the Carlin Charleston world says the problem is that we got this concept of race. And if we do away with these boxes that we put people in, if we do away with that and begin to treat people as human beings, then we can stop a lot of the mental, the mindsets that create this idea that you're different than me and I can treat you different, that I'm better than you, whatever, which came from this race concept that created the hierarchy that said there's this group at the top that we call white people, and there's a group at the bottom that we call Black people. The other groups fall somewhere in between. We're better than you up at the top. You're lower at the bottom. And that's a mindset that drives a lot of the behavior, and it drives the attitudes and actions of people who do very bad things in our society. So that's the world that Carlin Charleston says has got to go away. We got to do away with by eliminating those boxes and this idea that there are boxes, because it's not true scientifically. It's not true in any manner. So we got to do away with that. And the opposite of that, the other side of that is critical race theory that says it'll always be here and we need to learn to exist with it. And when they say that, they don't understand how they're saying this idea, the concept of the hierarchy will always be here. And so we will forever fight. And it's almost like they justified their fight because it will always be here. It gives rise to the fact that I've got to beat this thing down because it is here. And so we got to keep fighting that thing, when the answer from my view is let's do away with that thing. You won't have to fight. And so we kind of change that. So that's why we are stuck here inside of this race paradigm, because people believe that we've got to operate inside of it. And I believe we got to do away with it entire.
Yeah, it's really sad because I know a lot of, and I'm sure you do too, very intelligent, much more intelligent people than I am, but who are so inside the paradigm, don't see a way out and think it's absolutely a waste of time to try to get out of that paradigm. Instead, spend their time fighting and arguing against racism instead of dealing with the root cause of it. So it's an uphill battle, man. But you're a fighter. I'm a fighter. Others are fighters. So and if God says so,
boy, did we pick a good one. We picked a good fight.
For sure.
We didn't pick a small fight, so we got to make it happen. All right, and
but
one of the things.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, go ahead. You can go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, along the way, there's these other things that come up that we address at the same time, like what's happening in the communities with policing and all that. It's not like we are blind to that stuff. We got to address those things as well. So.
Yeah. And it's, I think one of the things we got to do is we have to, you know, I've got lots of people who hate me. I don't hate anybody. And when I try to talk to some of those people who disagree with me, it's become an art form because my job is to engage people who disagree with me and try to convince them that there's a better way. And so I've come up with these principles of learning to dialogue, which I think is very good because if nothing else, if you don't get anything else out of this, which I've learned personally, if I don't get anything else out of it, I've learned how to respect people that disagree with me. And if we could get that in our society today, boy, would we be further down the road. And so if nothing else you get out of this learning how to dialogue segment today, and like I said, I keep telling Wayne that we're going to have to make a class of this, a presentation on this, because if we can enact this, it's the first thing that'll get us to making some progress on the race solution. Because first thing we got to do is start talking and listening to each other. We got to listen to each other, respect each other in the dialogue, and understand that we can work on this together. So here we go. We get things. I want to cover these quickly because we got to get out of here. But this is our concept of what we need to do to dialogue. If you notice, we have dialogue at the very bottom. There's so much that needs to happen before you begin a conversation. And if you do that correctly, then you can have a very constructive conversation. It's like Washington politics. They never get bills passed. They don't get much done because they never get to have the conversation with each other, understand each other, and work on solutions together. It's always about, this is what I want, and this is what I want. Well, if you're not gonna give me what I want, I'm not gonna give you what you want. That's politics. And that's the way so much of our dialogue is out in society. Either you give me what I want, or I don't take time to listen to you. But if we can start from a different place, that we're going to work together, but I need to understand from your viewpoint what you think is important. And then you understand from my viewpoint what I think is important. And now let's have the conversation. So you see, this is way before we get to solutions. This is us understanding each other. So you initiate a communication that respects each other. You disarm yourself so that you're not coming, I'm not coming to shoot you or kill you. I'm coming to understand you. And I do that by understanding you're human just as I am. And one of the things we do in some of the forums that we have online, we tell people, tell us about your family. Because when you start talking about family, you got a grandchild, I got a grandchild. Oh my goodness. It's something about the connection there. You just go, oh, that's cool. My 3-year-old, yeah, he's terrible. I fight with him all the time. People can relate on the human scale. And now we can talk about life because I understand what you're dealing with is the same thing in life that I had to deal with. And then you ask, someone say, hey, well, can we talk about this issue? I know this is a contentious issue. You think this way about white people. I think this way about black people. Can we have this discussion? And you say, yeah, your grandson. Yeah, you got a grandson. I got a grandson. Let's have the conversation, whatever. And then you can do that. You can when you start dialoguing and you start saying things, you can say, well, can you clarify that for me so that I understand? And you don't just take it at its worst, because so many arguments don't need to happen. They would never happen if you said, well, explain that. I'm not sure I understand. Could you clarify that? They would not happen. And now you're at this place where the dialogue can flow freely. You've done all this work before. And so all these things, learning how to dialogue, these things are going to be very good for any work that we want to do in our society. We got to learn how to dialogue. So.
Excellent. Yeah. I actually used this past weekend. A good friend of mine. Now, so we already had passed the humanized part, but we were in total disagreement on some things about, our leader, and he's very good in support. And, I have my opinions, but we were able to have a really good conversation at the end of it. Love you, brother. We're still in disagreement, but using these points really work. We gotta begin to use these so we can have this dialogue that's very needed right now.
Okay, and we're out of time on our show today, but I got closed with my book of the week. I used the same book last week, and I didn't have the picture of the book. The book is $28 out there. Either you can go and spend $28 to $30 and get the book so you can read it, or you can call me and ask me to read passages to you, which would really be cool. Carlin's book reading class. All right. So here are two good quotes out of the book. Man's Most Dangerous Myth, The Fallacy of Race by Ashley Montague. Really great work. This is what I call my Bible for erasing race. All right. It says, when human beings are defined on the basis of the differences in their physical traits, we narrow the definition of their humanity. Yeah, we make people less human when we view them as a black human, a white human. They become then less human. That's huge, people. All right. When we call people black or white, they become less human. I might have to make a Facebook post about that. Okay, here we go. Here's another one. The fact is that all human beings are so much mixed with regard to origin that between different groups of individuals, intergradation and overlapping of physical traits is the rule. What does that mean? It means we're all mixed up. And while Wayne looks like he's got an afro there, and you might think of him as just a black guy, Wayne got some relatives not too far away who got some serious European and straight hair and all those things. And all those things are very evident when you look at Wayne's children. You know, Wayne's children don't look all just like Wayne. They're not just all Wayne skin color, you know, and even Adrian, his wife, you know, brighter skin. So we're all mixed up with a lot of stuff. Go get your DNA done. Let's find out what we are. That's what I always said about the alt-right or white supremacists. If they get their DNA done, they're going to really be upset.
They're going to be mad.
They're going to be mad. They find out they're not really pure. All right. So that's where we are. And we got to end our show today with our usual pitch of getting people to donate. Really, we're still looking for monthly contributors. Go out to our Erase Racist Facebook page, our eraseracist.com website. Sign up to support us. We need monthly contributors. Go out and buy some of our merchandise. You can buy some. We've got some really nice T-shirts out there. Mask if you want to do that. And if nothing else, you can always volunteer. And so we're running over our time today. So I just want to close out and give Wayne the last word before we get out of here. Go ahead, Wayne.
Hey, everybody, you know, just stay safe out there. Get out there, register. Most of you, I'm sure, are already registered, but encourage other people to register. This is time to support your community, support your nation, you know, whoever you vote for. You know, just get out there and do it. We know that people in this country have died for the right to vote. So I think yesterday was 100 years since women had the right to vote. So enjoy your time out there. Pray for California, man. We on fire out here, so we need y'all prayers. All right.
All right, and we're out. And always remember, hey, vote for Erase Race. Yeah, go vote for Erase Race while you're voting. All right, we're out. Y'all have a good week. Daylight Raps on here, Wayne. We got to get Daylight Raps.
Here last night.